Hi there, I'm Skaji. I'm a practicing witch and a professional tarot nerd, and I'm glad you're here. Welcome to the math episode. I'm kidding. A little. Kinda. Just wondering how many people clicked off of this because I used the math word. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about numerology and the tarot, or at least how I look at it. To get things going, I'm going to summon a past me to start the discussion. Bear with me a moment. Summoning oneself from the past can be a little bit tricky. Oh, it worked. Hello, past me. Oh, hi there, future me. Looking good. Thanks. I had a good foundation to build on. Don't we ever change clothes? Well, of course we do. These are clean. It looks like we fixed the oil lamp. Looks nice. Oh, yeah, turns out it was just So, what can I do for future me today? Oh, right. I'm talking about numerology and the tarot today, and I thought you could help. Oh, sure thing. I was just going to talk about numerology myself for this video I'm recording. Oh, I already did that. What? Oh, don't worry about it. Temporal mechanics gives me a headache.
Our vocabulary word this week is numerology. The OED, or Oxford English Dictionary, tells us that numerology is divination by numbers, the study of the occult or hidden meanings of numbers. The word numerology has really been around in English for only about 100 years or so. Prior to then, the word used for this practice was arithmancy. So, word nerd time. Numerology has at its root numeros, which is Latin. And then there's that little logi stuck on the end there from Greek. And today we use that to mean study of, like biology, geology, astrology. You get my drift. So wouldn't numerology really just be math? Ask that to a math teacher. And why do we say numbers and not numers? And why don't we say numberology? Language is weird. Arithmancy, on the other hand, is all Greek. Arithmos is Greek for number, and that's where we get arithmetic. And that mancy stuck right there on the end means oracle or divination. We see that show up in things like cartomancy, tasseomancy, alluromancy, zygomancy, all of which are methods of performing divination. It's fun to realize also that mancy is related to the Greek word mantis, which was used to refer once to one being touched by divine madness. Crazy, huh? A quick internet search will give you all kinds of sites which will do numerological things with your name, your birth date, and I'm sure other aspects of your life. And those sites will provide you with all kinds of interesting facts about you and your life as well. I'm not a fan of those sites. Humans and the lives we lead are far too complex to be reducible to single digits and canned descriptors. But that's just my opinion. If you find value and relevance for yourself in this way, and if it helps you be a better human, then go for it. Numerology, though, in the tarot is not about life numbers or destiny numbers and things like that. Numerology in the tarot, as I see it, is about helping us find connections between the cards, connections to the story of our lives, and can help us gain a bit more understanding about ourselves and our experiences.
I hope that was helpful. It sure was. Thanks, past me. No worries. See you soon. Past me can be so helpful sometimes. This thing we call numerology today is based on the idea that numbers represent or in some cases are, fundamental to the nature of reality, whatever that means. If a train leaves a station at 10:28 traveling at 23 miles per hour, I'll admit that this also applies well to applied mathematics and physics. It's in there too. But what we're talking about here as numerology relating to the tarot is a bit of a different animal as I see it. Isosophy is the ancient practice of assigning numerical values to letters and performing some basic arithmetic to arrive at a value from which we can derive a meaning beyond that of the original word. Gematria is the Kabbalistic application of isosophy to the Hebrew alphabet and to Jewish scriptures. I should probably point out at this point that the symbols we use for numbers these days have only been around since the 10th century of the Common Era. The number symbols we use today came to us from the systems developed in India, adapted and adopted in Arabia, and introduced into Europe through North Africa and Spain. Or maybe not. Scholars disagree on some of these points, but that's not really important right now. Prior to this, numbers didn't have their own symbols, but instead had to share symbols with sounds. The Greeks and later the Romans used number symbols from their alphabets, but those representations tended to be more complex than what we use today. Maybe you had to study Roman numerals in school. I know I did. And if you didn't, you should look into it, if for no other reason that many tarot decks use Roman numerals on many of the cards. Just about every tarot deck I've ever seen has numbers on the cards. It's kind of a thing with the tarot. And there's more than one way to think about those numbers. Many ancient societies developed numerological systems on their own. Generally speaking, though, there are a couple of different systems which you might apply to your use of the tarot. Now, I'm not a Kabbalist. I'm too lazy and too dumb for it. I think I've mentioned this more than once. But that being said, the Kabbalah is just chock full of numbery kinds of things, thanks to the fact that in the Hebrew alphabet, the letters correspond to not only sounds, but also numbers. Now, Hebrew isn't the only language that does this, but that's not important right now. But the most commonly used numerological methods these days are based on the Pythagorean system. You remember Pythagoras, right? He invented triangles. Well, at least that's what my grade school teachers seem to imply. You should look into Pythagoras. He was a weirdo. He had something against legumes. Anyway, what we call the Pythagorean numerological system today isn't really that old. That's the system where letters are assigned numerical values of 1 through 9. Our current take looks a little like this. The letters are applied to the numbers in alphabetical order. I've seen this done other ways too, but this one seems to be the most commonly used. But good old Pythagoras wouldn't have used this because he was a Greek fella. He didn't speak English or use English letters. But that's neither here nor there for our purposes, because this kind of numerology isn't what I'm talking about right now. Not directly, at any rate. This little chart can give us one way of considering numbers in the tarot. Now, in the Pythagorean system, the numbers are reduced to a single digit from 1 to 9. This reduction is done by adding the digits of compound numbers to arrive at a single digit. For example, 16 equals 1 plus 6, and that's 7. Our number 16 can be seen to relate to the energy of 7, of reflection and understanding. Another take is that numbers greater than 9 are split, arriving at 2 numbers. For example, 16 equals 10 plus 6. In this case, we would take a look at the numerological significance of both 10 and 6. Completion, which marks new beginnings for 10, and harmony for 6. Now, what if we combine both of these techniques? With our friendly 16, we have 10 plus 6. Reducing the two-digit 10, we get 1 plus 0 equals 1 to arrive at 1 and 6. Here we have beginnings of unity for 1 and harmony for 6. When we look at it this way, there are lots of different ways to consider the cards, but let's put it to use. See that tower there? This card is from the Rider-Waite-Smith deck and is numbered 16. When I look at that image, I certainly don't think right away of the previous correspondences we discussed. If we look more closely, though, we might see something different. Our friendly number 7, reflection and understanding. Well, I can certainly imagine that having my house knocked down by lightning would give me pause, and I might even reflect on that experience. Understanding might take a little more time. Using that second method, we have 10 endings and 6 harmony. All right, that ending bit makes sense, right? But harmony? What's so harmonious about the tower? Let's not get hung up too much on single keywords here. What's another way of thinking about harmony? Equilibrium, perhaps? Balance? Sometimes when things fall apart, the result is a new balance, a new state of equilibrium. All right, I'll admit that might be a stretch for the tower in general, but sometimes these stretches make themselves known in the context of the reading. And there's something else to remember about these correspondences. They each contain their opposite. When we consider the numbers as a spectrum, things can, well, add up. And that third way of thinking about it, where we arrived at 1 and 6, well, with 1 we have beginnings. And often when things fall apart, we're kind of forced into that new beginning, right? And then there's that 6 again. Now, I can talk. I'm sure that's quite a shock. And I enjoy it. I'm going to enjoy being an old man. Okay, an older man. What with all the seemingly pointless stories to tell, I like stories. Storytelling informs the way I read and utilize the tarot, and that applies to how I see numerology in the tarot as well. Think of the numbers on the cards, the minor arcana in particular, as a weird kind of story arc like this. We begin at the beginning with the idea of something, what Plato might have called forms, which leads to the process of formation, becoming embodied, challenged, arriving at understanding, comprehension, and contentment, reflecting and choosing action, energy, and momentum, finding fulfillment, and completion. Now, there are other ways to look at the numbers in the tarot as well. Take a look at this card, the Devil, number 15. Reducing this number, we get 1 plus 5 equals 6. Which major arcana card is numbered 6? And that's the Lovers. Looking at these cards side by side, we can see something interesting. They're kind of like two sides of a single image. Looking at the cards this way can often give us interesting insights. In a spread, I look for repeats and patterns in the numbers on the cards. If there's lots of 3s, for example, that might indicate a lot of 3 energy, a trend of realization, of things becoming real. How the positions, these repeats in a spread, relate to one another can be helpful as well, providing insight and context for where this energy might be an influence. And what about multiples, like 3, 6, 9, all multiples of 3? Can these tell us something? How do the ideas of formation, stability, and fulfillment relate to one another? If one steps aside from the image on a card just a little bit, a multiple can indicate an increase or decrease in the energy, depending on how it falls in the spread. And it can indicate a favorable or an unfavorable influence. What we've talked about today are just a few ways to consider numbers in the tarot. If you choose to use numerology in your tarot work, and you don't have to, but if you do, keep in mind that tarot numerology might not align exactly with the concepts used in more common or traditional or New Age numerology. And all this is just my take on it. You might find your own way in your own practice, and that's awesome. Do what works for you. Thank you for spending some of your time with me today. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you did, please like, subscribe, share, comment. I'm Skaji. Safe journey.